Kyle here from All Media Reviews, here to do albums of the year 1990, although again it's a rough draft. I was going to just show one or two things before I get into those. Look at this new limited version of Waterloo. It's a mojito cocktail, which is like mint and lime. No sugar, yeah, no alcohol of course, it's just carbonated water, but they have a cranberry that's usually seasonal too the last few years, but I've been kind of really enjoying that. It's like nice to find a new flavor. On the follow up on a few other lists, I found my copy of TNT's Tonal Tales. I don't think I showed this in the video, but I had this and actually have the CD. But no, I don't have the CD. Maybe that's what I did. But of course, it's in one of the books I'm missing probably. I did find my copy going back to the Minnesota Prog list. Post-rock band, post-metal band, Empires. There was a Mars Volta CD that I found that got like 3 copies of that record. And then I found my copy without the jewel case of Grace Point's Science of Discontent. So, and I also did not include on an '89 list, talking about the previous albums of the year list, Mike and the Mechanics' Living Years, I believe is the name of the album. The album with that song. So the point that I do these again, and probably in a few years, I'll have to remember that. This is kind of why these are rough drafts. I think that's the name of the album. Anyway. So 1990, the first year, obviously from the 90s. I was in junior high, or actually about to enter. I was entering high school the next year. Yeah, it is the living years. So. I got a bunch of records that I've inserted in here and a bunch of records that I didn't get even sample. I just know by name, reputation, a little research, but still haven't done. One album I do have that I did not even include on the list, which I only listened to a couple times many years ago when I was supposed to getting into bands like Fate's Warning. The band Sanctuary, who I know World Dane, I believe, used later went on to Nevermore. Josh from Heavy Debriefings loves Nevermore. So, but yeah, their album Into the Mirror Black came out that year, but it could be on this list of stuff that it's nowhere. So, the others on that list, one of these I did sample, but Mekong Delta, Dances of Death, and Other Walking Shadows. Pat Metheny, Dave Holland, and Roy Haynes, Question and Answer. I listened to some of I just listened to clips of that the other day, and it's not fusion really that much. It's just like post-bop. It's okay, but not amazing. Band name Necromandus. I don't remember why I reckon the name's familiar. Orexis of Death. I forget why I know that name. Wendy and Lisa, of Prince and the Revolution. Prince, I don't know if they were part of the New Power Generation, but at least they were of the Revolution. They did a collaboration album called Heroic. I don't know if that was Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. It might have been. Andy Summers, obviously former of the Police at that point, album Charming Snakes. I don't know if it's kind of new agey, but anyway. Yosundur, Peter Gabriel, the singer, his album Set. World Party's Goodbye Jumbo. Michael Hedges' Taproot. Real adventurous guitarist Michael Hedges. Adrian Belew's Young Lions. David Burwald, of David and David fame, and then later would play on the Tuesday Night Music Club. And Kevin Gilbert, he played on Thought I Believe at points. His album Bedtime Stories. Osric Tentacles, Erpland, like the second or third Osric Tentacles album. I don't have that. I know it by reputation, but I've spent very little time with that one. Robin Hitchcock's I. Fish, Phish. There's another Fish coming up on this list as well. Their album Lawn Boy. The early Fish I've always meant to spend time with and get into. I know they were influenced by prog. Later they were taking the baton from the Grateful Dead more so in the jam band elements. But anyway, that album Lawn Boy, it's like their second or third record. And then of course LL Cool J's Mama Said Knock You Out, which I know the title track, and there's a few other hits on that. So. Alright, so going from the bottom, I count 27. I hope I got a couple singles in here. It's a weird. I don't always show every version of every album or any related release, but so I have this Madonna release, and I have a single for it, Hanky Panky. But this is the soundtrack to Dick Tracy. Dick Tracy was a massive film, and it was like her second movie. She'd done Suddenly Seeking Susan, but. This is the first movie I knew of Madonna doing movies. I know, again, she was in that movie previously. She may have done one or two other movies before that, but She was trying to get into Hollywood, and she did it to some degree. She did, was it Evita as well later, but the biggest reason why I have this is because Kevin Gilbert did the cues, and he did some engineering. His name's on here at least a few times. Bill Bottrell, of course, was Madonna, who had worked. Well, Bill Bottrell obviously had a relationship with Kevin on the Tuesday Night Music Club and with Toy Matinee, I believe. And Thud, I believe he was also. So he was on this week. He's establishing a relationship with Kevin. I mean, I'm not sure if Kevin's on every track. Patrick Leonard's, of course, on some of this. I'm looking for his name. I know it's on his site. It's been on. I wouldn't have bought this, but it's weird how Guy Pratt, of course, Jeff Beccaro is on Something to Remember. The Kevin Gilbert fan in me should know this more religiously on what, because I just haven't listened to this because it's a soundtrack to this movie. A lot of it's sort of, it's called vaudeville or Roaring '20s kind of the style of Dick Tracy, the world that Dick Tracy set in, the era per se. Yeah, his name. I'm looking for his name. I'm sure it's on here, but I'm not finding it. Mandy Patinkin's on it, of course. I think Tim Pierce, of course, also worked with Kevin with Toy Matinee, but I don't know. Oh, there he is. He's listed on Now I'm Following You Part 1. He did more engineering, but he did engineering on that track anyway. But it does have Vogue on, oddly enough, which musically doesn't. I mean, I know Vogue lyrically talks about eras of old school Hollywood and stuff, so that sort of fits, but musically it doesn't sound like the rest of this soundtrack. It sounds more modern sounding, of course, and it was a huge hit, but Kevin, I looked at the on Wikipedia, Kevin's not listed on Vogue. I don't know if it's ever been updated or corrected, but so anyway, that's number 27. I want to get to the rest of the list. And Extreme's second album, Porno Graffiti, while I do like parts of it, I think, and I didn't even talk about the first album, the one after it I absolutely adore, but it has moments, although at least listening on Spotify is pretty compressed. It's known for obviously More Than Words, which was everywhere. It wasn't really 1990, it was like, it took a couple years, but that song was just played to death, and it still is frequently. It's a ballad. It doesn't sound like mostly the sort of guitar shreddy funk element that Extreme brought in. There's some horns on it. I know Gary Cherone, of course, resembles like Sammy Hagar. You can see why he was a choice for Van Halen, even though the music they wrote didn't really work out. I wrote songs like Little Jack Horny, More Than Words, of course, Song for Love, Wholehearted, It's a Monster, He-Man, Woman Hater, Get the Funk Out, and title track. There's moments of good musicianship. Some of it is shreddy. Some of it is kind of, it's like the Extreme sound, I think, and they did some vocal harmonies. That's what I really think Extreme stands out. Like, they're a little like Def Leppard, but I think they were a little better than Def Leppard in some ways. But I don't know, maybe it's more of just my affinity, and I think they were being more progressive and experimental with the record after. It hurts this record, and this is the one that most people know them for, and beyond More Than Words, the fan base loves the second Extreme album, but it probably could go a little higher, but that's number 26. Number 25, some people consider it sort of a pretty, lackluster Styx album. I've always liked the song Show Me the Way. I think I got this through BMG Music Club. It was one of the CDs of the month. I can't remember on the membership for Styx. I want to say Glenn Burtnick, who was with Judas Priest or someone like that. Yeah, it's Glenn Burtnick's one of the guitarists and vocalists. See, I don't know if yeah, you do have Dennis DeYoung. Tommy Shaw, I think, had left, so Glenn Burtnick probably replaced him because Tommy Shaw was doing Damn Yankees at this point. So, yeah, Show Me the Way. The title track to Edge of Century is okay. It has that sort of late 80s sheen or early 90s. It sounds like, they could say that Presto sounds a little bit like that from Rush in some ways, but Carrie Ann's another one. I've never got attached to this, but I remember kind of liking it when I listened to it back in the, early 90s when I got it through the BMG Music Club. But number 25, number 24, Rhythm of the Saints from Paul Simon. The three singles are decent. The Obvious Child, the title track, Born at the Right Time, and Proof. Proof is the best track on here. That's the most experimental track on this record. I know people that prefer this over Graceland, and I guess push comes to shove, I might kind of lean toward that. I've been listening to Graceland a few weeks ago, and even though Graceland had more of his pop hits, but Rhythm of the Saints, I don't know. I mean, part of it with Paul Simon is I think I prefer Simon and Garfunkel to his solo stuff. I don't know why, because they fit more with that aesthetic of the 60s rather than his later stuff. But yeah, it's okay. I maybe someday I'll appreciate it more. Number 23, a-ha's East of the Sun, West of the Moon, which mostly for that the track that's first on it. I can remember it, Crying in the Rain. But you know, I mean, after that record with Take on Me, never really been able to, invest the time to really appreciate. Even though I liked that documentary they did a few years ago. But anyway, a-ha's number 23. Number 22, Judas Priest's Painkiller, mainly for the title track. I've never gotten fully into. I've kind of ignored. I haven't included a lot of Judas Priest. If I do these lists again, I'll probably include some of their classics. But the title track is one of the heaviest songs they ever did. I can appreciate that from sort of not an extreme metal, but when I was getting into some extreme metal, that song I was going back to a lot. So the number 22, number 21, Suzanne Vega's Days of Open Hand, Tired of Sleeping, Men in a War, and Book of Dreams. Yeah, I think Susan Vega generally, most of the songs I find things to like, although it's some of the songs more than others have moments. This is kind of mid-level for her. That's why it's not as high, but I know I've wanted to get more into, my wife's more into her. I know people that love her, and so, yeah, that record, the way, I didn't even include her last record on the 88 list. Of course, that had Tom's Diner, I think. Maybe I did mention, I can't remember, but anyway, number 21, Suzanne Vega's Days of Open Hand. Number 20, okay, so I have both the CD, and I just grabbed it, and there's a couple references to this record. The band, the one off, 1990 was a year that a lot of bands only put out their first and last album, but Human Radio. Look at the picture of these guys. I'm not sure where these guys were from. Was it Columbia House? No, I mean in New York. The thing is, when I got into Toy Matinee, this was one of the bands that was referenced on that Red.net that was compared to them. And as it turns out, I actually knew a couple of their songs. At least I knew the song Me and Elvis way before. Because I heard that song on, it was like KQRS locally here, the classic rock station, and wanted to know who it was by. And I called up KQ more than once, and they said, I don't know what you're talking about. We have a song called Calling Elvis, and I think that was Dire Straits, but Me and Elvis is the one, and that, it's the first track on here. Yeah, it's kind of like art pop, progressive pop. It has an influence from Tears for Fears, you could say. Of course, the 1990 debut album from Jellyfish and Toy Matinee came out this year, so it was kind of a similar ilk. This wasn't nearly as good, but actually, I'd probably listen to this over the third Matinee record, but it's not bad. I know the guys, they went on to other things, the big guys in Human Radio, but I don't recognize their names. Steve Arnold, Steve Eby, Peter Hykra, Kai Kennedy, and Ross Rice. So, I don't know. I mean, it was like a major label, I think. But then the label probably dropped it. It was Columbia, yeah. So, but yeah, it's a decent record, Human Radio. If you like Toy Matinee or that kind of progressive pop from the late 80s, early 90s, this is an obvious suggestion. It kind of has the same mold of not the Goo Goo Dolls, but I mean bands I like Dada and like Archangels, that kind of stuff. Anyway, Human Radio, the self-titled album from 1990, number 20. Number 19, Tony, one with an I, one with an E, and one with a Y. The Revival, which was their second record. This is Raphael Sadiq's band before he went solo, of course. It features the hit Feels Good. That's the song I know the best. We saw Raphael Sadiq live twice, and he did that. Kind of a very Stevie Wonder element. Yeah, New Jack Swing a little bit within. It's R&B. Oakland Stroke, there's a remix, or like a special remix on Spotify of that. And then the Blues are the other two highlights for me. So that's number 19. Tony's second record, The Revival. Number 18, Public Enemy's Fear of a Black Planet. Of course, I think of it, this was maybe the definitive gangster rap album. 911 is a joke, I used to listen to this all the time going to school. My friends, we would listen to Hendrix, Zeppelin, Hendrix, Neil Diamond, KQRS radio, and then we'd play this frequently. Of course, it has that line in, I don't know if it's the title track or what. with that whole like sampled thing was white baby, white man, white woman, white baby, black man, black woman, black baby, white man, black woman, black baby, white woman, white or black man, white woman, black baby. You know, but which isn't necessarily always true, actually. You know, but the dominant gene for skin color, which really doesn't mean a lot. It just is filled like, I remember there's one track they're talking about steel magnolias, which is hilarious. Steel magnolia shit. Polly Wanna Crack. It's got a lot of humorous elements, little samples, little social commentaries. Fight the Power also, that's the other banger on this album. It's probably the most well-known song on here. More Than 911 was a joke, actually. Yeah, I mean, it's a classic. I probably should have it probably a little bit higher because, I mean, among the early rap albums, between this and Straight Outta Compton and, you know, Nation Full of Millions, whatever, and the Beastie Boys, this is probably the one I look as the most sort of iconic, even though maybe not the one I would listen to the most, but anyway. So anyway, Fear of a Black Planet, and of course, Porcupine Tree did Fear of a Blank Planet. Play on words a little bit. Fear of a Black Planet, number 18. From Public Enemy. Number 17 now, I'm gonna include a few of these, which is kind of sacrilegious in some ways, but this is my early days, and for nostalgia's sake, I'm including a bunch of compilations. So I have the Van Morrison Best of Van Morrison compilation, which has, you know, not all his best stuff, but a lot of songs that when I first, you know, I'd heard Brown Eyed Girl, I'd heard probably Domino, and maybe Moondance, but some of the other songs like Washing Windows, It Stoned Me, Here Comes the Night, Wild Night. It's a compilation. It's a, you know, whatever. This is a best of, so it's gonna have songs that people know that I knew, that I grew up with. I was listening to a lot of classic rock in 89, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92. This was a go-to, and I played it a lot, so that's why it goes on the list at number, 17. I mean, I'm not a huge Van Morrison fan, but I like a lot of his music. I know people have reservations about him as a person, but he's kind of tame compared to some people, I suppose you could say, anyway. So number 16. Oh, everything needs to be moved down one again. I screwed this up. Yeah, so that was 18. This would be 17. Number 17. Depeche Mode's Violator, which was their most commercially successful record, I think. It had their biggest hits. Personal Jesus, Sweetest Perfection. Well, Enjoy the Silence is huge, and Sweetest Perfection. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a massive Depeche Mode fan, but I always felt like between Depeche Mode and The Cure, and even throw in New Order and Joy Division, Depeche Mode was the best of all those bands. When they're good, they're actually pretty damn good. I don't look at them at the same level as U2 or even INXS, or like Tears for Fears, but I think that I'm sort of in between. They're better than The Cure, but they're not as good as U2, kind of. And this is their best record by a lot of people. This is their most kind of like commercially sounding, most like commercially successful record. So Violator from Depeche Mode. Number we're gonna go with number 18, 17. That's number 18 actually. Number 17. Yeah, number 17 rather. I think this is right. Let's see here. 20. I don't know. Let's just say these are tied for 17. So number 16. Black Crowes, another album that I listened to a ton in high school. Shake Your Money Maker. I guess this is the second Black Crowes album. I think it's the second one. Maybe this is the debut. So you could say that 1990 was a year of really like big debut albums. Unlike some of these bands, though, the Black Crowes, of course, went on to do more music, although they haven't had this, like, at least from a visibility standpoint, a huge commercial career. I mean, a hugely, like, prolific career, since, at least from a visibility standpoint, since the early 90s. Yeah, this was their debut album. I'm thinking of a different band, but they're from Atlanta. Anyway, they sounded like a mixture almost of, like the Stones and Zeppelin to me, or I don't know. For being into classic rock, this was an obvious one that the classic rock stations picked up, even though it was a new band. And it features like 4 like their most well-known songs. One of the songs I thought was on here was on the next one, Remedy. Remedy's on which some people liked more than this one. And they're actually they were like connections with the guys from Jellyfish, even though Jellyfish was from California, they're from Atlanta. But it has Twice as Hard, which the way he sings that, the singer Chris Robinson, he sounds like he's saying "said my boss" or "said my baw" twice as hard. I don't know how you get Baw from Hard, but twice as hard, the opening track. Jealous Again was a pretty big hit. The biggest hit was Hard to Handle, the cover, which I did not know was a cover at the time. And then She Talks to Angels. That's the other, just, that song got a ton of play. I forget who, it was like a Motown act or something like that, or a blues artist who actually originally wrote Hard to Handle. Does it say Hard to Handle, originally written by? You think it would. No, it doesn't. I guess I'd have to look at the lyrics. And this doesn't. Another thing about CDs at one point. Okay, yeah, it was Otis Redding. It was Otis. That's right. I was close with Motown. Anyway, 1968. But yeah, but there was a time when even in CDs you wouldn't necessarily get the lyrics in cassette tapes. But anyway, Shake Your Money Maker from Black Crowes, an album I've always liked. I mean, it probably could go a little bit higher actually, all things considered. But at number 16. Tied for 17th, or I don't know, 16. Number 15, I'm going with this mostly on reputation. I still haven't spent a lot of time with it, but listening to some of it today, I have to admit that the guitar textures warrant its greatness, and so the reputation. I'm going with Death, Spiritual Healing. I think this was their second record. The opening track especially, Living Monstrosity. Yeah, I mean, the vocal style that Chuck had was... It's not the easiest to get into, although the fact I can listen to, like, John Oliva, or even more so, say, like, Jason McMaster and the other singer from Watchtower, it should be simple to probably digest, and the guy from Voivod. But the guitar work is just great. You can totally hear the influence they had on Cynic. I mean, it was really connected. The guys in Cynic were in Death at one point. And then a lot of the, progressive death metal that came later. Anyway, Death, Spiritual Healing, number 15. 14, In Excess is X. 3 or 4 big hits. Suicide Blonde. You listen to that song, you listen to the song Panic Station from Muse, you can totally hear that they were riffing off that track. Disappear and Bitter Tears, among others. I mean, it's not as good as Kick, but it's pretty close. Production-wise, melodically, the songwriting has twists and turns and dynamics, some of the instrumentation. They use some sax in there. So anyway, NXX is X, number 14. Number 13, Rust in Peace from Megadeth. It is a classic. Some people consider it Megadeth's finest work. It doesn't have their biggest hit, which was, I think, Symphony of Destruction, which is the next record. But having listened to this, I mean, the thing flows. I mean, it's some great guitar work, some very fast, speedy guitar work. I think actually Mustaine, half of this, the first half especially, is not as comical as he gets on some of the other records, but it's still in there, the comedic style of vocals. Songs like Take No Prisoners, Five Magics, the demonic vocals are funny, and I like the demonic vocals. I know they just kind of slowed it down or whatever. And then Rust in Peace, the final track. Just, oh man, the energy is off the charts on that. Yeah, they were speed metal, thrash metal and speed metal. They were faster than Metallica, oddly enough. I wouldn't deny that. Not necessarily better, but faster in some ways. That's what Mustaine was going for after he's like, I'm going to be faster than them. All right, number 12. I mean, I got the numbers all correct here. Going with George Michael, Jorge Miguel, my wife's favorite. This isn't her favorite record, I don't think, from his, but Listen Without Prejudice, which this was in the process when he was basically responding to all this attention and that... I don't know if he was fighting with the record label at this point, but anyways, like, listen to my music without any prejudice. He didn't have himself in the video for Freedom 90. And Freedom 90 is a banger. It still holds up. It's the fantastic piano part, and the sort of, the vocal lines, the clothes don't make the man. It's, it's the choruses you can't get out of your head. And it's become sort of like a, like a cult song the last, 5 years. I mean, even before he passed away, but it seemed like after he passed away, everyone was discovering Freedom 90. It's not Freedom, which is a different song from Wham, of course. But having listened to this, a lot of this is what a lot of stuff George Michael would do with these sort of very jazzy, kind of loungy, jazzy ballads, but some of them have these epic swoons. The song Cowboys and Angels, I contend that song is better than Freedom 90, actually. Praying for Time is a song that got radio play. That's pretty big. I don't know. I mean, in a lot of ways, this is a more mature record. It's sonically, in some ways, more impressive than Faith. It doesn't have all the pop sheen, sort of the sort of earworms that Faith had, but I think in some ways it's a more interesting artistic record. So I don't know. My wife loves George Michael so much. I think her favorite is actually older, the one after this. But anyway, people, you know, if you've never heard, you like George Michael, you like Faith, you've never heard this record, it's pretty stupid. You need to listen to it. So, you know, Heal the Pain. I don't know. I know if he wrote this. I don't know if that was also when he was dealing with, I don't know, like the loss of that guy, the partner of his. I forget. It was around that time. This came out in 1990. So, anyway, I know people say it was like George Michael's matured, even though you think you listen to Wham versus Faith, there's a big kind of stylistic difference, just from a style, like, you know, pop songs versus singer-songwriter per se and everything like that. So, number 12. Number 11, Psychotic Waltz, A Social Grace. I have some Psychotic Waltz albums on CD. I do not have that one. This is the debut album. So you had a lot of debuts this year. Black Rose, Human Radio, of course, and, well, more that are coming up. But, yeah, this is... Psychotic Waltz are kind of one of the unsung artists from the early days, you could say, per se, of progressive metal. And I've listened to my fair share of Psychotic Waltz. I've liked them. I've always wanted to like them more than I have. They're very technical at times. They have a singer that's distinct. He writes some interesting parts and vocal lines. So they're kind of like, they're not quite as far off the deep end as Watchtower, but they're more busy than Fate's Warning. So somewhere in between. But I think Psychotic Waltz are great in the sense that there's a lot of stuff sort of buried with it. They're like Voivod. I would say that between them and Voivod to me, kind of fills that sort of desire for the mixture of technicality and songs better than like Psychotic Waltz does it a little bit better than Voivod. It's pretty crazy. And the Devil Cried, another Prophet song. The syncopation is just fantastic on that, in the dynamics. In This Place has like some little voiceover parts where the singer, he's known as both Devin Graves and Buddy Lackey. Who's Buddy Lackey with this point of Psychotic Waltz. When he changed the bean in the band Dead Soul Tribe, he went by Devin Graves, and I don't know. It's almost like Darrow Suttereth and from the singer from Fair to Midland, Darrow and Andrew. Psychoanalytics, he's talking about. And then the Psychotic Waltz, they have a song called A Psychotic Waltz on this album, which is kind of a waltz. I mean, how they got their name, and kind of moves kind of methodically. There's also a really big Jethro Tull influence, and I've pretty much always been given that impression from Psychotic Waltz, is like, well, I'm basically listening to a prog metal version of Jethro Tull. In some ways, yes. In some ways, they get more crazy and technical than Tull ever did. But the use of acoustics, there's some flute even on it. But Buddy Lackey sounds a lot like Ian Anderson on that song, I Remember. Sleeping Dogs is a nice instrumental. There's a lot of moments to enjoy on this. Some people consider this their best record. They have like 6 records, and I'm probably going to talk about more of them. They had like an EP and a demo before this. I know that Brennan from Death by Unicorn talked about in those videos from that year. I don't typically put demos in there, and even EPs I pick my spots, but yeah, there's one other track, Spiral Tower has a very cool march. Was it 1,000 Miles High is one of the lyrics. It has this chromatic guitar solo. Yeah, I mean, Psychotic Waltz, I don't think I'll ever get into them as much as Fate's Warning or Sabotage or King's X, or any of the other kind of classic prog metal bands, Shadow Gallery, Pain and Salvation. But I think I still probably could appreciate them slightly more than I have to this point, some 20 years later after I first started checking them out, more than 20 years ago. So anyway, number 11. Tied for number 9, in effect. And I had both these compilations. I'm talking about compilations earlier with the Van Morrison ones. Tales of 1001 Nights, Volume 1 and Volume 2 from Renaissance. Diving into Renaissance, I can't remember because I knew about Annie Haslam through the 2 Magna Carta tribute albums. I got these first, and I just fell in love with her voice, with the compositions. It doesn't have everything. It doesn't have the Sherazade piece, that sweet, that big epic. There's some of the tracks it doesn't have, but it has A Trip to the Fair, which is my favorite Renaissance song. It has a song for all seasons. It has a lot of their classics. So between the two, I had to buy both of them. It's kind of weird. Also, there's an Enchant album, which I'll be talking about later when I talk about Enchant in videos to come. That the artwork is basically identical or almost identical to one of these Renaissance compilations. I had it in a book. It's on the Lost Book. I don't even know where the booklets are, but anyway, because I was at Nearfest showing that to Enchant. They're like, "What is Renaissance thinking?" I can't remember, but they were released in 1990, so that was way before Enchant ever did that. But so number eight, I got my kitty cat saying hello. The debut album from Fish, Derek Dick, after leaving Marillion, which a lot of the compositions on here resemble some of like the demos that weren't, or even some of the tracks on. I mean, there's a few, not say a lot, a few of the songs you could hear moments from Season's End on here. Kaja, I need my computer, so I can't really. Oh, you're gonna. I guess the cat makes their decision. See, but Vigil and the Weirdness, the Fish, they're remastered it. They're releasing like a box set, and Fish was playing it on his Fish on Friday streams, which he does. The song "The Company" is awesome. I mean, it does resemble, Clutching at Straws some, and, you don't have Steve Rothery's guitar, but, and it's, it has the guys that Mickey Simons, I think, and, yeah, I mean, Fish's stuff, I both owe it to myself to make a video and owe it to myself to sort of, like, invest more time to really, that would be a goal down the road. Within the next 2 years, I have to do a Fish featured discography run. At least one video, if not like multiple videos on his catalog. But some people consider this Fish's best record. I wouldn't go that far, but I think this resembles Marillion the most out of all his. Even though, you can hear the bits of the Fish Marillion, you can hear a lot, still some of it just because of his vocal style and the vocal lines and some of the lyrics. But I don't know if this was Mark Wilkinson in the artwork, but anyway, Number 8, Fish's Vigil. Is it a Vigil? No, Vigil in the Wilderness of Mirrors. Which I know one of the songs he mentions the title track. I'm a Marillion fanboy. I'm gonna have to put Fish somewhere in there, relatively high, because I just, I love Marillion, love Fish. So number 7, the most probably important compilation and maybe the most important compact disc I ever owned, because this is what introduced me to Rush. I got Show of Hands, I think around the same time, maybe even before it, but I didn't start listening to Rush until I started listening to this, really. I maybe listened to Show of Hands if I had it before, like, once or twice. And, I mean, this is not, it doesn't have everything, obviously, from, like the Van Morrison compilation, like the Renaissance compilations. Chronicles has a lot of the best of it. It has a lot of the classic rock staples, like Free Will, Spirit of Radio, Tom Sawyer. That's what I wanted. Red Barchetta was on here, Limelight. Red Barchetta I hadn't heard, of course. That radio didn't play that nearly as often. But then it also had like a Farewell to Kings. Farewell to Kings soon became my favorite Rush song when I was listening to this. But this is one of the first like 10 CDs I probably ever bought, or 15 CDs. I got this from BMG, and I played this to death. So I owe so much to this, even though again it's a compilation. Rush's Chronicles is super important for my music taste. Got me into Rush, and then all the progressive rock and everything else, songwriting in general. I mean, I knew Zeppelin before them, but anyway. So, I don't want to hurt your paw, Kaja. So, alright, number 6, Eric Johnson's Av Via Musicam. So, this is the second proper studio album. Of course, he had done the fusion stuff with Electromagnets in the 70s. And I have always felt like, well, this has the song, maybe his most well-known track, Cliffs of Dover. It was on Guitar Hero, and, people love that track. And it's good. It's pretty good. I've always felt that this album I didn't get as much from as Tones, the previous one. Now, there's, of course, the one after it, Venus Isle, which arguably is like a combination of the two in some ways, but also kind of different. But we'll come to that when I was like 95, 96 when that album came out. Songs like Highlanders, the guitar tones are just great. Nothing Can Keep Me from the bridge. The solo is super happy. I mean, he's like a mixture of Hendrix and Pat Metheny, really. His vocal styles are clean. Sometimes it gets to be a little new agey. Pat Metheny did that too, and I can kind of take or leave sometimes. I mean, of course, my favorite Pat Metheny album has a fair amount of new age elements to it, but yeah, it's good. I think it was his most commercially successful album because it had Cliffs of Dover, but I don't get quite as much, but it does have good flow. The whole record's only like 45 minutes, and that's why it goes this high. It's a pretty good record from Eric Johnson. Not much more I can say about it. I mean, I don't know if I redo this list if it will go number 6, because some of these records I might enjoy more, but you know. For now, number 6, Eric Johnson's Avaya Musicom. All right, top 5. So here's the deal with this. I don't actually have a vinyl copy, which I thought I bought years ago and I didn't. And I don't have like any booklets, but I have the actual compact disc CD, which I got, I think, was from lala.com. Jane's Addiction's Ritual de lo Habitual. So to go along with this compact disc without a booklet or a jewel case, a proper jewel case with the back part, of course, I have this assortment of singles. Been Caught Stealing, album version, it has a demo version of Had a Dad, and the remix, the 12-inch remix. Then I've got the Stop single, and I've got, which is my favorite track, my favorite Jane's Addiction track, a lot of favorite, like, prog people's, 3 Days, the 10-minute and 45-second version on CD, which, of course, I don't know if 3 Days got a lot of radio play from, like, you know, the college stations. Probably not classic rock, would have later found themselves on, like, the alternative stations, of course. But I do have the 3 Days 12-inch also. So, and 3 Days is a tour de force epic. It's, you know, it's up there with, some people compare it to Stairway to Heaven, I don't know, Stairway to Bohemian Rhapsody. You know, it has time changes, it just, the build, the kind of methodical build, the climax is just fantastic. Perry Farrell's sort of vocals extending himself out and everything like that. And this version, this has the demo of Jane Says and I Would For You, interesting. But yeah, I mean, it's their Prophet song. I mean, it's a fantastic piece. You know, unfortunately, they have released 2 sort of records since Ritual de lo Habitual, and nobody ever talks about them. They're not rated high, but I've never spent much time with them, so I should. But just talking about Ritual de lo Habitual, besides 3 Days, which is the highlight of the whole record, and their whole catalog for me. I mean, they have other songs I enjoy, and they were a big influence on a lot of music I enjoy. Even though they're considered like they're a punk band and alternative, they invented, you know, grunt, whatever. They were also art rock and prog. But Ain't No Right, No One's Leaving. Obvious, the song Obvious has this really cool tribal element. Kind of reminded me a little bit of like A Few Words for the Dead from Marillion. Has some piano. And Then She Did has a very prog element with some strings and synths. And some violin. There's like some lead violin. Yeah, Ritual de lo Habitual. While I like Nothing Shocking, it's clearly I like it more. Not dramatically, but I like it more. It's the better. They're 2 early records. They're 2 classic. I mean, you want to say the first record was live, but so but I was wrong. I don't think, you know, of course, Pigs and Zen and Ocean Size were both on. One of them was on Nothing Shocking, but one of them was only on the live album, the Jane's Addiction live album. But hey, no biting, no biting. All right, number 4. I'm gonna do this restless list with you on my lap. Did he get me? You know, he didn't really get me, thankfully. Queensryche's Empire, their commercial peak, of course it has Silent Lucidity, but this record, like Jane's Addiction, is more than just 1 or 2 tracks. This is a fantastic record beginning to end. Not quite my favorite, but pretty damn close. Another Rainy Night Without You, they did 2 versions of that video. It's a catchy earworm. I never forget the line, "Now my take-out food is growing cold, and the candles burn the hole in the floor. I'm still waiting for the ring of the phone." The title track has its sort of social, militaristic, political commentaries, very anti-war, anti-sort of gang violence with guns and stuff like that. Jet City Woman. Jet City Woman is probably my least favorite track on this album. It's still decent. Hand on Heart, One on Only. Anybody listening is epic. That's very proggy. The dynamics and the vocal harmonies. Best I Can is nice. The Thin Line. Della Brown. Resistance is a live staple. It's a great record, Empire. I mean, I guess it has more melodic songs, but it still has its prog in it. But then Operation Mindcrime. Now, you know, the record after it, I can talk more about why I appreciate that even more. But yeah, Empire's a classic, 4 stars easily record, and why it finishes number 4 for me. So now into the big top 3. Go with Spilled Milk, the debut album from Jellyfish. You know, this one includes Jason Faulkner. Also includes, well, you know, Eric Dover, I think, would join later. Anyway, my favorite song in here is King is Half Undressed. That was one of their singles, did the video. Beavis and Butthead had a video for that. Then there's That Is Why, which was an earworm, totally like call back to the 60s. But This album is just filled with just catchy hooks, vocal harmonies, Beach Boys harmonies, Queen harmonies, ELO harmonies, ELO sort of dynamics and, you know, arrangements. All I Want Is Everything. I mean, this is power pop. Bedspring Kiss, Baby's Coming Back. That's like a power pop song from the 60s. The Monkees could have written that song. Or, you know, Beach Boys or, you know, the Kinks. Yeah, it's a fantastic record. Man, I Used to Be is great. It kind of starts out slow, but it builds. I Want to Stay Home. Yeah, the COVID element to that. Of course, Portnoy and all those other guys did that cover of it. Because, you know, everyone could go out because of COVID. She Still Loves Him. I mean, that's total Beatles. That's like a completely, something totally off of like Revolver or Rubber Soul. That song easily could have been on there. Yeah, it's Andy Sturmer, Jason Faulkner, and of course Joseph Manning Jr. I think Chris Manning was on this one too. But yeah, Jellyfish, they're one of my favorite bands, despite their very limited catalog. And this is one of their 2 proper records in their debut album. That's why it finishes number 3. Number 2, I'm gonna gush over another record, of course, because you're in the top of. You have to gush over the records at the top. Why would they be at the top otherwise? King's X's 3rd record, Faith, Hope, Love. 3rd record in, what was it, as many years, actually. Then they took a 2-year break for the next one. But probably their most commercial record in some ways, because it has the hit It's Love, even though it wasn't that big of a hit. It was a small hit in it. But I have a lot of favorites on this album. I mean, it's, of course, the 3rd album of Sam Taylor, 3rd of the 4 Sam Taylor albums, which had a certain sound. You know, the detune, you know, the drop D tuning guitars that they kind of, they didn't pioneer it. They at least sort of led the ship to like bringing that on to grunge, for better or for worse. But you know, songs like Moan Jam and Fine Art of Friendship, I love. I always think that's underrated. King's X never does that live either. People know We Were Born to Be Loved. You know, Letterman's band with Paul Schaefer played covers of that. And it's very progressive. That's total prog. The riffs, that it's like an 11 or I'm not sure. You know. Talk to You, that is a crazy, like almost out there. I don't know who to compare it to. Faith No More, Zappa. The vocal mixing and all the. It must have had 78 vocal tracks with the different samples, like voice box stuff and stop and start staccatos. I Can't Help It. The groove is great. There's obviously King's X are known for their groove. Mr. Wilson. I don't know if that was about either Brian Wilson or Wilson. Or Mr. Wilson from Dennis the Menace. I always think of Mr. Wilson from Dennis the Menace. I'll Never Get Tired of You. We Were Born to Be, or we Are Finding Who We Are. We got 2 songs that start with the word we. But We Are Finding Who We Are. That was the first King's X song I probably ever heard, and I thought it sounded like Lenny Kravitz, which is weird. But because Lenny Kravitz had put out his debut album just the year before. What am I forgetting here? I think that's about it. The title track, which is kind of a slow burn epic. It builds up and there's all these voiceovers on it, you know. So, Legal Kill. I know Legal Kill's about, you know, like legally, like abortion or something like that. I'm not sure. People have thought about different things. I don't know if the guys will ever explain what. Because I read that book and it wouldn't actually go into details what it actually was intended to be about. But yeah, Faith, Hope, Love. Well, you know, it has the religious and Christian overtones. They're not Christian rock. It's spiritual, but I've definitely thought about this album and a lot of the early records in a spiritual sense. But it's just a record with so many ideas. It's kind of taking the first 2 records and just, it feels like a double album. It's not, but there's just so much going on this record. So, number 2, and of course, what's number 1 going to be? 1990. What album came out in 1990? The album that introduced me to Kevin Gilbert. King's X guys were fans of Kevin Gilbert, of course, too. Toy Matinee, Kevin Gilbert and Patrick Leonard's, you know, highly produced, highly expensive, super, you know, musicianship-based, art, progressive pop album. You know, Last Playing Out was, you know, first song most people ever listen to Kevin Gilbert know, and it's still a fantastic song. It's, you know, it's about a bunch of different things, but sounds a little bit like Tears for Fears, but you know, this I've talked ad nauseum about this album, but it's perfect pop, perfect clever pop rock, basically. Comparable to Steely Dan, comparable to Tears for Fears, comparable to Jellyfish. You know, Turning on Salvador has Julian Lennon, of course. Things She Said sounds like a song I would hear in a movie with Kevin Bacon. Remember My Name, it's like that one too, actually. The title track, the ballad, talks about the circus and stuff like that. You know, Queen of Misery is about Madonna. You know, I like the long bouncing off the walls. The rhythm, the energy on that track is great. Ballad of Jenny Ledge, you know. Of course, Kevin would... There's connections to songs on this album with some of the songs he did, but, you know, it's a masterpiece. I feel like I've talked about it ad nauseum, but, you know... It's Toy Matinee. It's one of the most finely produced, finely written albums to me in the history of music. And it came out in 1990, and that's my album of the year from 1990. So that's my list from 1990. What if I forget? Christian, I'm sure, will post about 48 albums I didn't remember. You know, what is on your list? I'd love to see that. 1991's coming up soon. There was one other note. I'm going to be doing the Pepe Deluxe series starting this week because it's the 25th anniversary of Super Sound. So Pepe Deluxe is starting, you know, and then I'm probably going to, speaking of Kevin, I'm probably going to go through Live at the Troubadour because the anniversary of his death is coming up in a few days too on the 18th. So, but thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.